Hello, how are you doing today? I am doing wonderful and very nervous, but very excited to be uh, taking the first step in what hopefully is going to be a more consistent, uh, informative, useful, um, resource where we talk about local news in Austin, Texas. We might add more cities in the future. We might talk about local news in reference to Texas, but today we're focusing on Austin, Texas, and we will be focusing on Austin, Texas every Tuesday. So today is the first Tuesday of this particular attempt to bring something to you at home using this platform. And hopefully, beyond anything else, it'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions, to have a discussion with people that live in your community, that people that live in Austin, people that are concerned about what's happening in Austin. Because beyond what I can provide, I know that you guys have edifying conversations in the comments constantly when we're bringing up topics such as the ones that we hopefully are going to talk about today, and that's news in Austin, Texas. I gotta get used to looking at the camera. It's awkward because it's just like a little black dot, and so I tend not to look straight at the camera, but I'll get better at that, guys. So, um, I hope all of you guys have had wonderful holidays. I hope that every single one of you has been safe and has been spared from any hardship, financial, health wise, any kind of hardship that might, sometimes come in between our path. So I really hope that all of you have been well. And now to begin today's discussion, I want to focus today on primarily two topics. I hope that these don't ever go over half an hour. They might go longer in the future, but for now, I'm keeping them nice and short and sweet so that I start getting a good idea of what works and what doesn't work when doing these kinds of reports, this kind of coverage. Definitely, new to journalism, but willing to learn and willing to mess up and fail and bring you guys along with me on the ride if you're willing to hang in there. So, in Austin local weekly news, we're going to talk about COVID because COVID has been in the last week. So, we're going to stick to covering only news. Of last week, and we're not going to try to go too much further than that because I could go back infinitely, but I feel like it's good to focus 1 week at a time. That way, we don't get too overwhelmed with the amount of information that we're consuming throughout this particular episode or this chat or this talk. So, um, COVID in Texas has been really, really, I'd say, has been a really grave situation. Unlike many other states, Texas is seeing a unique rise in hospitalizations, and in the spread of the disease. In Austin, Texas, in particular, according to the Austin Statesman, thank you so much for all those hardworking journalists. More people are hospitalized today than in any other time during the pandemic. So today in Austin, Texas, there are more people in the hospital than even before May, when we first thought that the shutdown was going to end May 30th. Up from March until today, hospitalizations have not been as bad. So what are those numbers exactly? Well, according to the Texas Departments of State Health Services, the previous high of nearly 10,900 was broken. More than 11,300 Texans were hospitalized on Monday. Those numbers are incredibly high, and in Austin as well. I'd like to, make it really, make a point or emphasize the fact that many people feel like maybe this pandemic is over, especially with the vaccinations and everything. But the vaccinations and other efforts by public health experts are not going to manifest any results immediately. This may take months. It may be until July where we start really seeing different environments. Um, So, we're really, still in a position where we're going to be seeing a lot of the effects of the pandemic. People are continuing to work from home, and maybe even possibly more restrictions as New Year's approaches us. The Austin, Texas mayor, I believe, was considering shutdown, but we'll talk about that more a little bit later. So, reported cases may have appeared lower the last few days. So a lot of people may respond or think that, reported cases in the last few days seem to be lower, but that's mainly because health departments did not report the data to the state over the holiday week. So we're still yet to see what the holiday did in terms of either exacerbating or deterring the amount of people that get sick from COVID-19. For some reason, I believe I may not be seeing your comments. But I'll just keep going on with the news. So right now, experts are really concerned that hospitalizations are going to increase during the holiday season. As it is, I think we're about 62% in ICU utilization in Travis County. So this information came from Mark Escott, who was a medical doctor and health authority. He said that this week alone, we're reaching up to 62% of ICU utilization in Travis County, and that hospital beds can and will become scarce in a matter of weeks. So something may take months. It may be until July. More to try to keep in mind is, we're talking about the pandemic, and as we're trying to unravel and understand, the different things at play here, including the fact that, some of the state is delayed because of the holiday season. More people are together. So again, we just don't yet have those numbers to say that we understand completely, but it's really likely that more people are now sick, and we're seeing that more people are now sick than ever before. So, the next thing I wanted to talk about was the COVID vaccine in Texas. So, in Texas, the COVID vaccine has arrived. We have now been able to observe that the first people, hospital staff that are working directly with COVID patients, long-term care residents, and staff working with vulnerable residents, emergency workers, and home healthcare workers have gotten or have begun to get their vaccinations. So we've seen a lot of videos of public figures and nurses getting this vaccination, all the way from El Paso down to Travis County here in Austin, Texas. We've had about 1.2 million doses delivered to the state of Texas. So this will mean that about 1.2 million people may soon be getting the vaccine. Although more recently, we haven't seen nearly as many people get vaccinated as we have doses, which means that there's a delay in the shipments and the actual injection or the moment where people are vaccinated. So currently, people aren't being as vaccinated as fast as we're getting um, these vaccines or these doses of vaccines. Um, the other thing that's important to note, that's noteworthy, is that Austin police officers are now among the group of responders that are going to get the vaccine. That's going to happen probably closer to this week, and this information comes from the Austin Statesman. They're talking about how public safety wellness facility city officials were talking about the next phase, and that included APD. Before this week, I don't believe Austin police officers were allowed to get vaccinated, but we saw that again, the emergency workers and people working directly with COVID, and also at some point earlier this week, medics and fire officials were allowed to receive COVID-19 vaccines through University of Texas Dell Medical School. This started around December 19th. Healthcare workers now are getting vaccines at places like HEB pharmacies, and other pharmacies that have been accepted by the proper authorities to administer this vaccine. So, um, That's kind of what we've observed has been happening with the COVID vaccine in Texas. It is unlikely, like I had mentioned before, nationally and even locally, that people that are healthy or not immediately at risk will be receiving this vaccine. We may be waiting up to 6 months, up until June or July, which is why, I was mentioning earlier that this pandemic seems to be not at its end, but rather maybe at the middle. We still have another few months before the vaccines are administered to everyone and before the fact that people are getting vaccinated, it starts to work and starts to create more immunity among individuals. So, even more, we want to talk about how excuse me. Yes. So Greg Abbott on Tuesday of this week, so like today, said that a significant portion of more than 600,000 coronavirus vaccines delivered to healthcare workers in Texas might be sitting in hospital shelves rather than being administered to Texans. And this reflects in the numbers. They're definitely have not been even close to, I think, more than 200,000 vaccines administered in Austin yet. About 9,000 frontline caregivers and support staff have been offered and have received the vaccine. First responders, and just this week, we saw police officers. So this process is going a little bit slower. Governor Greg Abbott is concerned about how fast it's going, and other public health experts also agree with Greg Abbott's remarks that this is a matter of urgency, that we need to be administering these vaccines as quickly as possible with no delay, because the longer we wait, of course, the more this virus spreads. And remember that viruses spread in an exponential way. They don't just go from one to two. They don't spread slowly. With every day that passes, we get even closer to pretty much infecting everyone. Exponential growth is ridiculous. It happens faster than you can imagine it. Anyway, so yeah, every day is definitely important, and public health experts agree with Greg Abbott's. We've seen now first responders and some people get the vaccine, but not nearly enough for us to say that we're really making a dent or really using all the resources that are at our disposal. So those are some of the more important things that are happening in Austin or in Texas most recently. This information is probably, what I felt was some of the more important information to keep in mind about COVID going into the holidays. You should watch out for the news, as there could be now further restrictions put in place in Austin, Texas. For New Year's, there has been talks and remarks that indicate that will be the case. But again, some of these things move really quickly, so I would encourage you to, keep up, watch the news, and hopefully not miss out on whatever the restrictions end up being, so you don't get in trouble, or so that you have a good understanding of how to plan your holidays. And hopefully, I'll be back online sharing maybe articles or talking briefly about what these restrictions end up looking like specifically. And if I did miss them, let me know. I don't know if the restrictions have been yet clearly stated, but the last I checked, they haven't. Sharing maybe articles or talking briefly about what these restrictions. So, um, next topic I wanted to cover included the Black Lives Matter protests that we observed throughout the summer, and that many of you probably became familiar with through the stream or other sources. There are some movements and some actions being taken still from those protests. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the aftermath, but wanted to focus specifically on what I was seeing was brewing most recently, and that is that according to, this is the Texas Tribune, the Austin Police Chief Brian Manley has disciplined 11 officers for conduct that took place during May 30th and May 31st. So we're talking about the first Friday and Saturday, and maybe even Sunday of the protests, where many of these offenses of misconduct or cases of misconduct took place. And so now there have been 11 officers that were disciplined, but uh, there are now an additional 7 officers who are being considered to be tried for um, misconduct or excessive use of force during these protests. They have been placed on administrative leave while the Travis County District Attorney's Office reviews the cases, but District Attorney Margaret Moore, who is on her way out after losing to Jose Garza, is going to leave these 7 cases for Mr. Garza to figure out and to prosecute. And as we know, it's really clear that Mr. Garza does have uh, intentions of prosecuting these officers. He made this a very prominent and important campaign point. The Black Lives Matter protest broke out during the middle of his run against Margaret Moore. So this quickly, I believe, became one of his priorities, and he's hoping to move all police brutality cases to grand jury. Um, and so, a little bit more about that. It's important to note that as of November 26th, 27th, uh, they had that marked about 180 days since we observed any of the APD investigations related to the protest. And 180 days is a window that the Austin Police Department can investigate or discipline officers for misconduct under Texas law, unless there's a request for an extension, which might happen with these 7 officers. I believe, they're actually my mistake. I'm misspeaking. The Office of Police Oversight uh, recently released and said that they expect to provide more information about the disciplinary action that's being taken on these 7 officers, what their plan is, the case, the scope, the severity of the discipline recommended by the OPO. So it seems like the Office of Police Oversight, which is independent from the Austin Police Department, is also looking deeply into these 7 officers and is expected to provide information sometime later this month. So, in terms of aftermath, I mean, that's about as much as what is happening right now. Before that, a few months ago, the Austin Police Department did get defunded by $150 million, which was, I think, roughly like a third of their budget, if not a little bit less than that. They also had the support of Governor Greg Abbott, who to this day is still making an attempt to bring in the DPS, the Department of Public Safety, in place of the Austin Police Department, or to support the Austin Police Department now that they have been effectively defunded by the Austin City Council. He was absolutely not happy about this decision. We actually had a press conference where he spoke, and we had it live here and explained his position on Austin City Council's decision to defund APD. So that's still kind of going on, and we're still observing that the governor is pushing to leverage some power here, leverage some support, and bring in more law enforcement into Austin, Texas, using state resources. So, yes, so that's kind of what I had for today, guys. I know it wasn't incredibly long, and I definitely would love to see if you have any comments, any suggestions. I know that you were a little bit rough around the edges, but I also know that we're going to get better because we're going to work hard to get better. And I've always had this belief that I could really achieve whatever I set my mind to. So thank you so much for your patience. Thank you so much for joining us. Usually at this point, I would open the floor for questions, for conversation about these two things that we went over. I do want to mention that City Council has not acted much this week. They, for the holiday season and stuff, had their last meeting, not necessarily because of the holiday season, but the session ended. They had their last meeting. So this week, we haven't seen much. Activity from city council. It is worth to note that there have been some changes to city council, including the fact that Jimmy Flanagan is not a city council member. He lost his race in a runoff election just earlier this month. So far as we're also going to see, for example, like the city council is taking up billboards to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court might have to make a decision for Texas and specifically Austin about where digital billboards can be placed. So there's things like that going on in city council currently to be aware of, which is, I think, kind of interesting proposal. They want to restrict billboards, digital, I think, or otherwise, to the property which they're advertising for. So essentially, if you want to advertise, you would have to own property to advertise whatever it is you're trying to advertise through digital billboards. This is being contested as a direct challenge to businesses' freedom of speech, and Austin, I think, believes that this is more of a measure to protect the Austin skyline and Austin in general from too much pollution, whether it's light pollution, technology pollution, pollution in general. So that's being, maybe taken up to the U.S. Supreme Court, which should be rather interesting. Austin City Council also could reshape the debate over the land use code. So if you haven't read it, it's extremely long. It's ridiculous. It's available, thankfully, in quite a few languages. But the land use code debate has been going on for a while now. And if there's a power shift, like, for example, the loss of Jimmy Flanagan, which may lead to a change in the way that city council is debating this, it could mean that it could reshape the way that the land use code develops in Austin, Texas. Something else that I found newsworthy, and again, that was posted on the Austin American Statesman. Just a few other tidbits of information that I thought were interesting to mention, but of course didn't go too much into depth today. But as we develop this program, we'll be going much more into depth uh, in each of one of these topics. And so, yeah, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate all your patience and all your help. I hope that this was informative, that this was helpful, and I hope that you have a wonderful night and an even better holiday. We will see you soon. Tomorrow, we may have a podcast to drop for you guys. I will announce that tomorrow. I'll let you know what time the podcast is dropping, but every Wednesday now, every week, we are trying to provide you guys with a podcast where we talk about different topics with different guest speakers, from politicians to activists, to people that are experts in particular fields, whatever it is we need uh, to learn so that we can become informed community members. We will hopefully bring to you here through this platform. Thank you so much, guys, and I hope that you have, again, a wonderful night.